Imagine being rejected by every job you apply for. Imagine failing important exams. Imagine being told that you simply aren't good enough. Now imagine that the same person eventually builds one of the world's most recognizable technology companies. That person was Jack Ma. And the strangest part of his story isn't how successful he became. It's how many times the world told him he would never become successful. Before Alibaba became a global name, Jack Ma was simply a young man in China trying to find his place in a world that seemed determined to say no to him. But one thing made him different. He kept asking, "What if I try one more time?" And that question would eventually change his life and millions of others.
Jack Ma was born in 1964 in Hangzhou, China. He didn't grow up surrounded by technology, wealth, or business connections. In fact, his childhood looked almost ordinary. But Jack had something that would later become extremely valuable: curiosity. As a young boy, he became fascinated by English. There was just one problem. He didn't have the money for expensive lessons, so he found another way. Foreign tourists visited Hangzhou, and Jack began offering to guide them around the city for free. In return, he could practice English with them. Day after day, he rode his bicycle, met strangers, listened to their stories, and practiced speaking. He wasn't building a company. He wasn't making money. He was simply trying to learn. But without realizing it, Jack was developing a skill that would later help him connect China with the rest of the world. And there was another lesson hiding inside those early mornings. If you can't afford the traditional path, create your own path. But Jack's unconventional journey wasn't about to become easier. It was about to become much harder. School was not easy for Jack. He struggled with mathematics. The college entrance examination was even worse. He failed it more than once. Eventually, after another attempt, he was accepted into Hangzhou Teachers Institute. He graduated and became an English teacher. For a while, teaching seemed like the end of his journey. But Jack had no idea that his life was about to change because of something he had never truly understood: a computer. And then, the internet. In 1995, Jack traveled to the United States. There, he encountered the internet for the first time. He was fascinated. He opened a computer and searched online. But when he tried searching for information about China, he found almost nothing. To many people, that might have looked like a problem. Jack saw something else: an opportunity. He began thinking, if the internet can connect people across the world, why couldn't Chinese businesses use it too? That question led to one of his earliest internet ventures. It didn't become the huge success he imagined, but Jack had discovered something far more important than immediate success. Day after day, he rode his bicycle, met strangers, listened to their stories, and practiced speaking. He wasn't building a company. He wasn't making money. He was simply trying to learn. But without realizing it, Jack was developing a skill that would later help him connect China with the rest of the world. And there was another lesson hiding inside those early mornings. If you can't afford the traditional path, create your own path. But Jack's unconventional journey wasn't about to become easier. It was about to become much harder.
But there was a massive problem. Almost nobody knew what Alibaba was, and even fewer people believed it would work. Jack's team faced uncertainty from every direction. The internet was still young. E-commerce wasn't yet something ordinary people completely trusted, and competing against established companies seemed almost impossible. But Jack didn't try to convince everyone. He focused on the people who believed. That small group became the foundation of something much bigger.
Building Alibaba wasn't a smooth climb upward. There were financial pressures, there were doubts, there were competitors, and there were moments when the future of the company was anything but certain. But Jack understood something many people learn only after years of failure. A difficult beginning doesn't automatically mean a bad ending. Alibaba continued. The company grew. More businesses joined. More customers came. And eventually, the internet company that had once looked like an unrealistic dream became a serious force in global commerce. But Jack Ma still wasn't satisfied, because he understood that technology alone wasn't the real story. The real story was people, small businesses, entrepreneurs, ordinary individuals who had never had access to enormous markets. Alibaba could give them something they had never possessed before, a chance to be seen. As Alibaba expanded, Jack Ma became increasingly recognized around the world. The man who had once struggled with mathematics was now leading a major technology company. The man who had experienced rejection was speaking to entrepreneurs and business leaders. The English teacher had become an international business figure. But perhaps the most interesting part wasn't the money or fame. It was the transformation. Jack hadn't suddenly become a completely different person. The qualities that helped him succeed were present much earlier. Because success doesn't always begin with being the smartest person in the room. Sometimes it begins with being the person who refuses to leave the room. And there's another lesson. Jack didn't try to become successful at everything. He found what he was good at. He understood people. He communicated. He saw possibilities. And he surrounded himself with people who could build what he couldn't build alone. That's an important lesson for anyone trying to create something meaningful. You don't have to be good at everything. You need to understand your strengths and know how to use them. Eventually, Alibaba became a global business phenomenon. But Jack Ma's story had already become bigger than Alibaba itself. It had become a story about rejection, about persistence, about seeing opportunity where others saw nothing. The boy who once approached tourists just to practice English had eventually become a man capable of speaking to audiences around the world. The person who had once heard no again and again had created a company that connected millions of businesses and consumers. And perhaps that's why his story resonates with so many people. Because almost everyone knows what rejection feels like. Everyone has experienced a moment when someone underestimated them. A teacher, a friend, a company, a stranger, or sometimes even themselves. But here's the part of Jack Ma's story worth remembering. His biggest advantage wasn't that he never failed. It was that failure didn't become his identity. He could fail an exam without deciding he was a failure. He could be rejected from a job without believing he was worthless. He could face doubts about Alibaba without immediately abandoning the idea. That distinction matters. Because failing at something and being a failure are not the same thing. One is an event, the other is a belief. And Jack Ma kept choosing the first. Today, when people hear the name Alibaba, they may think about technology, e-commerce, and global business. But behind that name is a much simpler story. A person who was overlooked. A person who heard no many times. A person who didn't start with every advantage, but who kept learning, kept trying, and kept moving forward. So if you're currently standing at the beginning of your own journey, don't worry if nobody notices you yet. Don't assume rejection is a final verdict. And don't confuse a difficult beginning with an impossible future. Because sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the person nobody sees coming. And perhaps your greatest chapter hasn't even started yet.